Yep.
All right, Shalom. I want to start out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and Shalom to all the Akim out there pushing the word of sincerity and the truth. It's the brothers here from Great Millstone, Atlanta. You know, we have a lesson going into basically the Medes Empire, the revelation that basically Daniel received, and basically the inception and the downfall, the down spiral of the Medes and the Persian captivity. You know, because it was a while back, but I did something on Babylon, and Lord willing, we'll do a continuously go from Babylon to the Persian and the Medes, Greece, Rome, and America. You know, because those prophecies is very, very important, and that's the vision that Nebuchadnezzar actually had a dream of, which was the elevation of empires and the fall of empires, and we're living in the time of the fall of the last empire in the scriptures. But before we actually, of course, go into the present, like the scripture says, the Lord requires that which is past. So we're going to go into basically the Medes and Persian in captivity, and go into basically the rise, the expansion, as far as everything, the Jewish interaction of how did we actually play a part in this captivity. What were we doing in this captivity and the fall of the captivity. So without further ado, we'll just jump straight into the scriptures in Daniel 7.
Where do you want to start?
You can start with that 5.
God. This is Daniel chapter 7 and 5. It says...
Matter of fact, start at 3.
All right. This is Daniel chapter 7 and 3. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another.
Yeah, and when you go into Revelation 17 and 5, it says the sea represents peoples, nations, kingdoms, and tongues. Matter of fact, let me just read that.
I can pull it for you.
Okay. You get that. 17 and 5 or 17 and 15, one or the other.
Yeah, 17 and 15.
15, okay.
This is Revelation chapter 17 and 15. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues.
Right. So when it speaks about in Daniel's the 7th chapter, the beast represents different nations, because a beast is an animal without understanding and basically judgment. And these different kingdoms, they actually pushed a lot of ideologies and wickedness that was perverse according to the law, statutes, and commandments. That's why they were known as, they have 7 heads, 10 horns, different cruel images, teeth.
Mm-hmm.
They were all known as like basically mutated animals, because the kingdoms were a mixture of multiple kingdoms in one. It was basically a hybrid mutant kingdom.
That's right.
Like the Medes and the Persians, they took Babylonian principles, Assyrian principles, Egyptian, and it was just a mixture. It was like a melting pot of multiple kingdoms.
If I may say, when you look into the history of every kingdom, no kingdom act physically, carnally, they actually fell, but no kingdom has actually went away. Okay, right. All kingdoms have just been translated to the next, and to the next, and to the next, until you get, like what the brother was saying, until you get America, which is that melting pot of all those different other kingdoms, the Persians and Medes, the Babylonians, the Greeks, all their spirits are comprised to make up what you see today, America. No kingdom, the Assyrian kingdom, the Egyptian kingdom, all that is 100% done away with. Mm-hmm. Their spirits are still lingering, okay? But they're physically present? No, they're not, because they were physically taken down by different kingdoms. But other kingdoms, their customs and their philosophies get translated and probably put a little twist on when it gets to the new kingdom.
Yeah, that's why even in America, you learn about Roman numerals. Mm-hmm. You learn about Greek gods. You have Egyptian symbols on the dollar bill, and as well as the obelisk all throughout America. You have Assyrian practices. Yep. Here you have the Code of Hammurabi. You learned that back in school. So all these different kingdoms, like the brother said, is being resurrected in these times.
That's right.
Now. And going back to Daniel 7 and 3.
This is Daniel 7:3. And four beasts, Salakia, and four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 7, Salakia, verse 4. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings.
Right, and that represents Babylon. Like when you look at the symbol of Assyria, they had the lion with the eagle's wings, and Babylon actually adopted that symbol, just like we just said before. When the kingdom, because the Babylonians took down the Assyrian empire.
That's right.
And when they took them down, they took a lot of their symbology.
That's right.
They worshipped a lot of their gods. They took a lot of their victuals. Just like when we fell as a nation, all of our victuals got taken and worshipped. You read that in the book of Judges when they took the Ark of the Covenant and they put it right beside the statue of Dagon.
Oh, the book of Samuel.
Samuel, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
In the book of Samuel, you had the statue of Dagon right beside the Ark of the Covenant, and the kings in these times they actually reflected that same practice.
That's right, and that too, Nebuchadnezzar. When you read him in the book of Daniel, this was Nebuchadnezzar II. He was an Assyrian.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't no Chaldean or anything. So even the Babylonian kingdom took on an Assyrian king.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So to continue for you, brother, it says Daniel 7:4. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings.
Mm-hmm.
I beheld.
And the lion represents devouring and destroying. The eagle represents exaltation.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was an exalted empire, and it was very, very fierce and treacherous. Continue.
It says, I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked.
Meaning it fell.
That's right.
When you exalted and your wings get plucked, what happens? You fall. So this kingdom fell, and Daniel actually seen the kingdom of Babylon fall. That's why he was speaking to Nebuchadnezzar, and he said, "Thou art that head of gold" in Daniel the 2nd chapter. And right here he said, "I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked." So he's seen the fall of this kingdom. Continue.
It says, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand up, it made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it.
Continue.
Verse 5. And behold, another beast, a second, like a bear.
Yeah, and this beast is another kingdom. It said a second kingdom, likened unto a bear. Continue.
And it raised up itself on one side.
Right. So when you see the image of the bear, and brothers, of course, can look it up. The Medes and the Persians, the symbol is the bear, and it's actually exalted on one side, which represents one part of the kingdom actually being stronger than the other side, because the Medes and the Persian Empire, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Persians that were stronger than the Medes. They actually took down the Medes, and it was a joint kingdom with the Medes, which the Medes go back to in Genesis, Madai, which is one of the sons of Japheth. So the Japhites were actually in cahoots, so to speak, and it was a joint kingdom with the Persians and the Iranians, because the Persians, the word Persia goes back to the word I think, if I'm not mistaken, Pharsis, and that's not biblical, so to speak. Well, you have the word Persia in the scriptures, but ultimately the nationality of the Persians goes back to Elam. The Elamite kingdom.
That's right. I got a quick precept. Okay. This is Daniel 5:30. It says, in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom.
Yes,
took the kingdom of the Babylonians, but this was Darius the first, but he was a Median. Okay, so even so, like you said, one side was stronger than the other. Yeah. All right. It says being about 62 years old. In 2 years old. That's right. Going back to Daniel. So I just want to bring that out.
That's a very important part. Yeah.
The brother made the mention that yes, they were called the Persians and the Medes, but one exalted over the other. You can't have someone has to be over somebody.
Yeah, like even today you have the UN, you have the United Nations, all these nations. That's why it's known as the 7 heads and the 10 horns, and the horde that rideth upon the beast. So the horde is in conjunction, or is in a joint with the beast system, but it's still above.
It's on top.
It's still on top. So even with the Persians and the Medes, they were still attached but it was still one that was exalted higher than the next.
That's right.
So it was more so the Persian Empire. Of course, it was known as the Medo-Persian Empire because it was a joint empire. But the Persians actually superseded the Medes as far as power, as far as resources, as far as expansion, as far as control. So you get
it says, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it.
Right, and the mouth in the scriptures represents military might. You read that in, if I'm not mistaken, Psalms, the 55th chapter, break their teeth. Oh yeah, Howard?
Oh yeah, of the young lion.
Yep.
Oh,
Matter of fact,
I think it's the 58th chapter.
Yes, get that real fast.
Let's see.
Psalm 58 and 6.
Yeah, 58 and 6. There we go. This is Psalm 58 and 6. It says, "Break their teeth, O Yahweh, in their mouth. Break out the great teeth of the young lions, O Lord."
And that teeth represents the military might. Because what is your teeth in your body actually designed to do? It's a crushing and destroying instruments. They're known to tear. Like if you have meat, you have certain canines. You know, you have certain parts of your teeth that's designed for tearing and grinding.
That's right.
And as far as government goes, the highest form of tearing and grinding of other nations is the military, because you have the religion, you have the political, and you have the military. And the military in the scriptures, that's the only main reason why different nations are actually stand above the next, is because of the military power. And that's why when you read this in the Medes, they were known as an inferior kingdom as far as glory goes. They weren't as glorious as the Babylonian captivity, but as far as the military aspect, they were stronger. And military stands above all, you know?
That's right.
And that's why you had certain elitists, they'll actually speak about basically, if they control the military, they don't care about anything else. You know? Control the money, control the military, you basically control the people.
That's right.
So going back to the point of the ribs that it actually had in the mouth, the 3 ribs, when you go into it, it represents Egypt, Assyria, and if I'm not mistaken, matter of fact, let me look it up real fast just get the Lydians. Excuse me. So the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Lydians. Because when the Medo-Persian Empire came into power, they took down those 3 major kingdoms, because those 3 kingdoms were major city-states, so to speak. They were major kingdoms that were actually pushing, especially Babylon, especially Egypt, you know, and the Lydians too. You know, those were the major kingdoms that actually expanded, and they had a level of control. And those were like the 3 strongholds that the Medes and the Persians had to get through in order to fully actually have full control and dominion. So they actually hit those pressure points and they controlled them. Like that's why I said that the teeth was in his mouth, meaning when you actually have something, especially in the mouth of a bear, it ain't no way of getting out the clutches of that, man.
That's right.
So those Medes and Persians, they took them down, took those different nations down, the Babylonians, the Lydians, and the Egyptians. They set taskmasters in those different lands, and they put high taxation on them and monitor them closely so that none of them will be able to rise again.
Made them tributaries.
And matter of fact, I'm going to read a little bit on it. It says, 3 ribs. These cannot signify the people who constitute the second empire, but rather some kingdoms which had already been subdued by it. And by the command, arise and devour, the second empire is permitted to make further conquests before its disappearance. The 3 ribs have been understood from the time of Saint Hippolytus to mean 3 nations, the Babylonians, the Lydians, and the Egyptians. So that's what it represents. And matter of fact, there's another point, but it says, some think the allusion is to the eastern quarter of the world from whence the Persians came, others to the elevation of the Persians above the Medes and Babylonians, which 3 powers are conceived to be meant by the 3 ribs in the mouth of the bear. But Sir Isaac Newton and Bishop Chandler, with great propriety, explained them as signifying the kingdoms of Babylon, Lydia, and Egypt, which were conquered by it, but were not properly parts and members of its body. they might be called ribs, as the conquest of them much strengthened the Persian Empire. And they might be said to be between the teeth of the bear, as they were much grinded and oppressed by the Persians. Beautiful. So yeah, that's what it represents. You would continue on.
It says,
of course, if you want to jump in,
you got it, brother. I explained it.
Okay.
It says, and it had 3 ribs, and the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And it says, and they said, thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh.
Right, which represents taking down many nations, because they were devouring flesh by military strength. Just like when we fell to the Babylonians, a lot of us got killed in those different Babylonian wars. You know. And after they broke us down to a certain degree, they broke us down to the finest particle or state. They broke us down to the lowest degree. They collected. They gathered. Before you spoil a nation, what do? You ransack it. You burn it down. You know, you might have the battering rams. You'll take down the major military men, the leaders, and then you expand off of their resources and put taxations on them. America follows the same practices on to this day. That's why America is one of these kingdoms, and the last kingdom.
That's right.
Continue on.
But just like you said, how America, you're speaking about the teeth, and how they have the same customs of how these other nations took down these other nations. One prime example of showing that and making other nations tributaries is the sanctions that they put on them. All right, they put sanctions is just a synopsis of a sanction is just limitations. You can't do this or this, or you're being illegal. You're going against this. That's what a sanction is. And if you do this, we require this much money from you, or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's all a sanction is, and that is grinding someone's economy. That's putting their teeth, their canines, sinking into another economies or another nation's economies. Salakia, their canines, those sanctions are the U.S.'s canines sinking into another nation's economy. Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's right.
But I did have a quick example.
Okay.
Because the brother was talking about kind of what the Babylonians did unto us is what the Persians did to the Babylonians, which we literally just read about. What you had just brought out, just pertaining to on the teeth. When you go into the book of, I got it right here, 2 Chronicles, the 35th and the 36th chapter. Okay, when you read the 35th chapter, it talks about when King Josiah went into what? Battle to try to stop the Egyptians from battling the Babylonians. But in the midst of that, Josiah was really trying to stop the Egyptians and the Assyrians from fighting the Babylonians. That goes back to that mouth. It took 2 nations to fight against 1 nation.
Yep.
It took them to ally with each other to preserve their kingdom from another kingdom that was arising to take them down, and still didn't prevail. That's where you get the Battle of Megiddo.
Yeah, Battle of Megiddo.
In 2 Chronicles, the 35th chapter. And when you go on and read more, they come into the Battle of, I think it's called Carchemish.
Battle of Carchemish, yeah. That's
Carchemish.
what we're going to right now, yeah.
And that's when the Babylonians, I think that was in 605 BC, where they officially took down the Assyrians and the Egyptians and totally eradicated them. And that's where the shift of power happened. But it was through their military strike.
Yep.
But it's the same thing with the Persians and Medes. Their military advancement and their military might is what ultimately took down the Babylonians, man. That's why it says right here that they had 3 ribs in the mouth. Okay, meaning they had these Babylonians, the Lydians, and the Egyptians. That's right.
Yep. And
in the palm of their hands, man, through their military might.
Yep, had full control over them. And anything that they produced in those kingdoms, it had to be paid as a tribute.
That's right.
Because the money, the collection comes after the war. They wasn't worried about the glory. They was worried about the expansion. After that, the aftermath of all that is the glory and the building up of the kingdom and things of that nature. But see, the Persian and the Medes was already a particularly strong kingdom, but it wasn't a great empire. It started to elevate as an empire through the Spirit of the Lord actually exalting that kingdom, raising up that horn. And, through Cyrus, through various other individuals, taking down, Nebuchadnezzar, But
I had a super quick precept. I know this is kind of like spoiling the,
spoiler alert.
We're going a little further into the Greeks, but it's an example of what every kingdom's done this. Okay, even Israel's done this. When King David was totally subduing all these other nations, according to when you read Micah 4:1, where it says all the mountains, Yahweh's, pretty much government shall be established upon all the other mountains and hills, and the people shall flow into it. When David was taking down these other kingdoms or these other nations of people, well, guess what? They're in total servitude to him. Therefore, they were flowing into Israel, which was likened into them being a tributary.
Yep.
Hence why Solomon had those 40 years.
That's right.
So I just wanted to bring this quick precept out. This is First Maccabees chapter 1 and 4. And he gathered a mighty strong host. There goes the army.
That
again.
Military, yeah.
It's that military. That goes to show you how pivotal the military is. Yahweh Shai is coming back with his military. That's why they call Yahweh the Lord of Hosts.
Yeah.
Okay. It says
the Lord is a man of war.
That's right.
Yep.
The Lord is a man of war. All right. That's why the Lord can eradicate this place in a millisecond. But in Revelation 18, it says in 1 hour, because the Lord wants a little fight.
Yeah, to show his power.
To show his power.
And it speaks about how the angels, Satan, his angels in Revelation 12 is going to fight against the Most High, his angels, which represents what? Military battle. Esau from his aerial perspective, and his submarines and all his ground troops against the Lord's spiritual submarines and his military men on the ground in the air.
That's right.
It's going to be the same thing. That's why it's known as the last kingdom to arise. The righteous kingdom is known as a millstone, which the millstone is really represents the military. Grinding and a crushing instrument. You would use the millstone to grind things into powder. And how's the Lord going to grind things into powder? Oh, he said, I'm going to make thee a sharp instrument having teeth.
That's right.
That represents being militarily strong.
That's right.
The Most High going to turn us into super soldiers. Said that an ordinary man through the Spirit is going to be as David, and David shall be as the Most High. David was known through his miraculous and his strong army, which were the mighty men. That was his military.
That's right. I just had a quick precept because you had mentioned, they're going to try to fight Ariel with Yahweh Shai. This is Isaiah 34:4. I'm going to read it through. And it says, and all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down, as a leaf falleth from the vine, and as a fallen fig from the fig tree. But the point of the matter I really want to bring out, it says, and all the host of heaven shall be dissolved. And we know that word host means an army. Okay, we know heaven means in one of the layers of the firmament, or the sky, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Air Force, this is speaking about the United States Air Force, the Russian Air Force, all that. They're going to be dissolved in the sky when they come and try to fight Yahweh Shai, But
That's
going
right.
back to First Maccabees chapter 1 and 4, it says, he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. So that made what? The Lydians, the Babylonians, and the Egyptians became tributaries to who? The Persians and the Medes, due to their strong host.
They made a lot of money off of those kingdoms, man.
That's right.
And Cyrus, which he was a remarkable military genius. All these kings, a lot of these kings, they were known to be military experts.
That's right.
Even to individuals like Napoleon Bonaparte, they always speak about these kings and their military expertise. That's the reason why they were able to expand their province so far.
That's right.
It's through the military genius. You can't be a king without military. That's why even today, the president is over the military. What is it?
Commander-in-chief.
Commander-in-chief. So back then, it was the same thing. As a king, you would actually have to you would have full rights over the military. Because back in the ancient world, kings would fight on the front line, so to speak.
That's right.
They would be in the cusp of the battle.
Exactly. We mentioned King Josiah. Where did he die? Obviously he died after that battle, but where did he get brutally injured? In the midst of battle.
King Saul.
King Saul. King Saul died in battle.
Mm-hmm.
He went to war. Okay?
Yep.
King David went to war. How did he really solidify his position? By taking down a big-ass Hamite.
Yep. Goliath, yep.
Yep.
Goliath of Gath.
Yep. That's right.
Well, I had some. You had some more?
You got it, bro.
Okay, and going back to really the fall of Babylon, because we're going to jump around through the spirit a little bit just to drive certain points home.
Uh-huh.
Because with this history, you always have to paint the picture.
That's right.
This is hundreds of years of expansion, fightings, wars, control, and us in the midst. We had a heavy involvement in this captivity. That's where you get the book of Ezra, you get the book of Esdras,
yep.
You get the book of Nehemiah, you get the book of Esther.
Esther, yeah, that's right.
So it was like, what was we doing in the Medes captivity? What was our involvement? How did we play a role in this particular time? Was we just being slaves, just working a 9 to 5, or were we building? Because during the time of Nehemiah, even though they was under captivity, they were still looking to rise. That's why we got decree to build up the temple. But before I go into that, I really want to read this real fast, and of course, jump in. Daniel 5:22. And thou his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all these. And this is basically, if I'm not mistaken, Daniel actually talking to Belshazzar, which was the successor of Nebuchadnezzar, and he was basically speaking about his kingdom actually falling. So the prophet Daniel prophesied to the king to his face that his kingdom was going to fall.
That's right.
As well as to his father.
If I may say, like it says, and thou his son, thou speaking of Nebuchadnezzar II, but when you look, Belshazzar was actually his grandson.
Mm.
But it's kind of like me saying Kashakwala Bun Gad.
Right.
It's a genealogy of any.
He succeeded. That's right.
So he was still the same bloodline.
Right. And all these different names, Belshazzar, Nebuchadnezzar, a lot of those are different titles. That's why you have Nebuchadnezzar, the second, you always have the thirds. You have Darius the third. You have various Xerxes, Artaxerxes, you'll read it in the scriptures. All these are various Cleopatras, the Caesars. All these are just different titles. Antiochus, the Seleucids, Ptolemy, so on and so forth. So to really get the context of it, you always have to go into the timeline and see what kings in particularly actually ruled at that span of time in Daniel the 5th chapter to see specifically who it was. So going back to Belshazzar, and thou his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled thine heart, though thou knewest all these, but hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver, and gold, of brass, of iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know, and the power in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Many, many tekel upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Many. The Most High have numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Meaning that basically the Babylonians would actually have a span to rule, and after that time clock was over, that kingdom would never proceed from there. Just like America. America has a time clock. That's, what do they call it? The doomsday clock. And these devils know. The Babylonians had a time clock. The Persians had a time clock. But it speaks about our time clock in the kingdom of heaven, which is going to be forever. There isn't going to be no span of time in the kingdom of heaven. It's going to be rulership for immortality. That's why it says also in Job, the 20th chapter, the triumphing of the wicked is short. Because these kingdoms truly are short-lived kingdoms, man.
That's right.
The Medes and Persian Empire, those empires didn't have really long lifespans. And if you compare that to America today, the inception of 1776 until now, 2018, America is roughly, 350 plus years old?
that's the spirit you mentioned that, because when you go into the Assyrian Empire ruled for 201 years. On average, each of their king ruled about 22 years. The Neo-Babylonian Empire, which we're reading about right now, ruled for 87 years, and on an average, each king ruled for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Persian Empire ruled for 229 years.
Mm-hmm.
But we here in America stuck in 350 years.
Yeah.
They have one of the longest rules.
Them in Egypt.
Mm-hmm. Them in Egypt.
Yeah, space of 400
years.
It's something like 400, give or take.
Yeah.
A little bit of give, as it is written in Acts 7 and 6. But that's how we know we're living in Egypt all over again. Mm-hmm. You know, that 400 time span. But for America and this time span that it's been ruling, it's horrible.
Yeah.
That's how we know this place is done, because it reached this elevation. It tells you that in Obadiah, and you see that it's falling, man.
Mm-hmm.
Its resources is being dried up. The expansion of the military is falling, just like all these other kingdoms, man.
That's right.
You know, other militaries are gonna come and attack America, which that's a topic for another time. But going into these, we can see clean and clear as day how this kingdom is gonna fall. Also,
that's right.
All right. So going back to many, this is the interpretation of the thing. Many, the Most High have numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting. Meaning that was an imbalanced kingdom. It didn't weigh out. In America today, it doesn't weigh out financially. It doesn't weigh out morally. That's why in the book of Habakkuk, it's known to have thick clay. Yep. And the scriptures speak about you shouldn't have unjust weights as far as finances go, which this kingdom practices. So this kingdom is also found wanting, as the Persians and the Medes were found wanting in their time. You want to say something?
No, you got it, brother.
Okay. Paris, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Mm-hmm. So that's when the kingdom of Babylon truly fell. And they got the link of the scripture, Isaiah 21 and 1. I'll just read that real fast. Yeah. Oh, you got that pulled up? Okay.
It's Isaiah 21 and 1. It says, the burden of the desert of the sea, as a whirlwind in the south passed through, so it cometh from the desert, from a terrible land.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going.
Yep.
A grievous vision is declared unto me. The treacherous dealeth treacherously, and the spoiler spoileth.
Mm-hmm.
Go up, O Elam, besiege, O Median.
That's the Medes and the Elamite kingdom of the Persians. They expanded, and it was also known as the Achaemenid Empire.
Mm-hmm.
The Achaemenid Empire goes back to the king Achaemenes, and they basically, in the aftermath of Achaemenes, they coined it the Achaemenid Empire. Mm-hmm. So that's another coined name for the Persians and Medes empire, and that's why it says Elam besieged O Media. So those different nations were to take down Babylon, because Isaiah was prophesying against who? The Babylonian Empire. When Isaiah, Jeremiah, these individuals were living in Babylon, they weren't just getting down with the Babylonian lifestyle. They were declaring the fall of that kingdom. But you can continue.
It says, all the sighing thereof have I made to cease.
Mm-hmm.
It says, therefore my loins filled with pain, pangs have taken hold of me, as the pangs of a woman that travaileth. I was bowed down at the hearing of it. I was dismayed at the seeing of it. My heart panted. Fearfulness affrighted me. The night of my pleasure hath he turned into fear unto me.
Yeah, and that's really the main point of the scripture. You have some. If not, I'm gonna bring out this other scripture.
God, you got it, bro.
Okay. Going back to verse 29 in Daniel 5. They commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with the scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So Darius the Mede, he took over the kingdom. He preceded the kingdom, and he was a major individual that proceeded from that kingdom. And you had major pivotal people, which we're going to actually speak on, mainly Xerxes, Cyrus the Great, and various other kings. And I'm going to start with this scripture in Daniel 11. And I'll go ahead right fast. This is another prophecy that Daniel actually seen of the Medes and the Persians. This is Daniel 11:1. And also I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, and can you pull up that map?
Come on.
Even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. So through the Spirit, the reason why the Mede Empire was great was because of Daniel, man.
Yep.
Just like the reason why Joseph, or the reason why Egypt was great because of Joseph, and also Moses. The reason why Babylon was great because of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and various other individuals. The reason why the Persians and the Medes was great was because of Daniel, Esther, Nehemiah. You know,
That's right.
because Esther actually, these individuals, Mordecai, they were actually, close with the king. So on and so forth. So it says, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And that 4th king, matter of fact, if you could pull up Xerxes on 300, just the image. Because when you go into these different kings, and that is speaking about the 3 kings that were raised up, it was Suedo-Smyrdes, Cambyses the second, if I'm not mistaken, Darius, and we're gonna read about the 4th. It says, but those 3 were the 3 individuals: Darius, Cambyses the second, and Suedo-Smyrdes. So it says, and now when I show thee the truth, behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all. And this 4th king is the image that you see right here, which is Xerxes. You'll read if I'm not mistaken, the book of Esther with Xerxes, and you could actually even watch the movie if the brothers get the chance. The movie One Night with the King, which is a spiritual movie going into Xerxes and showing basically how this individual, basically how it correlated with Esther.
Mm-hmm.
And matter of fact, let me read this real fast. Mm-hmm. Esther 1:1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia over 127 provinces. And that's a lot of provinces to expand to. That's why when you watch the movie of 300, they were looking to take down the Israelites, which was the Greeks. They were through that Greek there was the Lacedaemonians basically in Greece, and you'll read those Lacedaemonians in the book of Maccabees, and that was one point of control that they were looking to control, but they didn't actually get the full control of that area, because it was always back and forth scuffles. Even though he reigned over 127 provinces, it was still a lot of areas that he didn't fully have his full grips into. You want to bring something out?
No, you got it. You got it.
All right, verse 2. That in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace. And Shushan is a very, very popular palace in regards to the Persian and Mede captivity, rulership, excuse me. They were known, that was one of their miraculous feats, so to speak, was the Shushan palace. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all the princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and princes of the provinces being showed him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180, which is 80 days. So he showed his honor and his glory of his kingdom for 400, for the space of 180 days. So that showed that this individual, Ahasuerus or Xerxes, actually had a large span of wealth, man.
Mm-hmm.
He was filthy rich. That would be the elitists at that time then. Because just like we was going into with these different kings, there a lot of times their fathers would be the warriors, and they would sit on the throne and collect all the riches. Like Solomon, for instance, Solomon didn't have to lift a finger. Why? Because his predecessor, which was his father, David, took down those different kings and did all the dirty work. And his hands were so bloody that he didn't even have access to build the temple. So it was the same thing with Darius, Cambyses, and Suedo Smyrtis when they came into power. They was all about expanding. They used all their energy to break down kingdoms. So when Xerxes sat on the throne, he was all about the grandeur, living it up, living high off the hog. Because even though it was still surrounding kingdoms to take down, it was like, all right, we took down. Hey, they had the teeth. They had the teeth in their grasp.
Right.
The bear was already lifted up. They had the Persians and the Medes Empire. They had the taskmasters. They had the overseers and things of that nature, and they had high levels of tribute, gold, and it wasn't paper, fiat currency, man.
Mm-hmm.
They was getting all kind of gold, silver, precious stones all throughout. It said that he was in Egypt, in Ethiopia. Yeah, he said he reigned from India to Ethiopia. So those Elamite lands, he had all those resources coming to his kingdom. All right, and matter of fact, the brother has the map right there.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how far it goes. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna pull it up on my phone. You see Parsegard, which is Persia, Media, Gandhara, Bactria, Parthia, Armenia, and you see the area of Assyria, Babylon, where they actually ruled too, because they got their hand all in that area also.
Mm-hmm.
They took down the Neo-Babylonian kingdom, which was Mesopotamia. You see their major kingdoms, Uruk, Susa, Opis, Nineveh, all throughout that land, in the land of Judah. And that's why during that time we actually got access to build our kingdom back.
That's right.
Was because of those kings gave us leisure.
That's right.
So continuing on, and when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan, and the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. And that's really the main point I wanted to bring out. And of course, the brothers that probably didn't go into the book of Ezra, it's important to go into these books, because you'll see how we actually performed in those different captivities, man.
Mm-hmm.
Were we just living it up? Were we trying to get a piece of the Persian pie, Medo-Persian pie? Were we looking to be in those different palaces and live it up and be in the Shushan palace? Or were we looking to build our own and expand our own province and get, gain so-called sovereignty?
That's right.
So,
you mind if I bring? Because like you said, they knew we were trying to bring our pretty much our own sovereignty back. You know what I'm saying? Our own rulership, due to the fact that Cyrus let us, or the Spirit of the Lord made Cyrus let us build the temple back.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you read Ezra's the 4th chapter. They wrote this letter unto Ahasuerus, and later to be wrote unto Artaxerxes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is where your diligent study has to come into play, because you see, we just read about Ahasuerus and Esther, the 1st chapter. That's when you look into it, these are two different people. So Ezra's 4 and 6, the Ahasuerus talking about right here, this is literally Cambyses II.
Mm-hmm.
This is literally Cambyses II, who ruled. He was actually the son of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great. The Persians took down the Babylonians in 539 BC, which was the real start of the Persian Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Cyrus the Great ended his reign around like 520, or I want to say 520 something BC, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to go off the rip on it, but Don't quote me on it. But then came Ahasuerus, which is Cambyses II, Ezra 4 and 6. And Ezra 4 and 7 are that Artaxerxes that I've spoken of. This is Xerxes the first. This is Xerxes the first. Now, the one that you saw in that image of the 300, that was, that was the one in Esther. Because he had all that big ass army. You see all them golds. I'm gonna pull them up again. He had all them golds on him. He had all the riches or whatnot. Salakia. You see,
yeah.
But he had all that gold on him, all those riches, all those spoils he got from the other nations. When you go to Esther, this was during the time about 425 BC. So this was this Ahasuerus was this Artaxerxes the first. It was him, because when you look at him, it even goes into him when you read how he was a part of the book of Ezra and the book of Nehemiah, so on and so forth. Okay, and this man right here was that man we just read about, of all those riches and whatnot. But it's just like with the Persians and with the Babylonians, you had a whole bunch of rulers, and that's how you know this the validity of the Bible, because it had all these rulers right here in these scriptures. But just y'all can do that really on your own time and look up who each and every single one of these particular men are. But I just wanted to kind of bring the light on who each person was.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Con, you got it, brother.
Okay. So going to you didn't have a precept. Well, matter of fact, since we already went into the map, going back to like we were saying about the in Daniel 11 and 2 about the fourth king, which was Xerxes, and the brother just showed the picture with the grandeur, and his successors also had a level of riches and a level of glory also. So continuing on, it says, and the fourth shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up against all the realms of Grecia. But that was the back and forth fights between the Grecians and the Persians and the Medes. But matter of fact, I'll just hold off with that, and we're going to just do a B-side to it.
Okay.
And then we'll just go into in the next segment, we'll go into the book of Ezra, the book of Nehemiah, the rebuilding of the temple, and the true fall of the Persians and the Mede captivity. So we'll just leave it with that. We're going to end it by giving all praise, honor, and glory to
Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Rachakadash.
Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom, Akim.
Shalom.